Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name's Quillen, and on this channel called Quillen Hall, I do all the things that a Quillen Hall ought to do. And today, that involves making a follow-up video to a Tekken vid I made before the big Season 2 patch, before the disaster piece that we now call Season 2. And I didn't think I was going to make another Tekken video when I made the last one. It was a one-off then. But now I feel that I owe it to the Tekken community to make yet another because I think that the community is in need of healing right now and is in need of a path forward, not just for the game, but for the individual. And so the previous video I made a lot of points there that I think were worth making, but I can kind of TLDR it a little bit in just having 2 points, which is really about the gameplay, because it was called How to Actually Fix Tekken 8. And I think that the points I stand by is, so number one, make the cheap 50-50s steppable, or at least give players soft counterplay to it, so give them something they can do instead of just having a hard guess or just like don't get hit, quote unquote. And then number two is make it as easy as possible to learn all the counterplay in the game. So do what you can to make the training mode and the replay mode very, very clear in terms of what you should do. Right? Now, those 2 points I stand by. I still think they apply. I still think if they did that, they would largely fix the game. But the problem that the situation we're in now is that, unfortunately, I think most players are fed up and disenchanted. And so we find ourselves in a position, you and I both, where we consider ourselves Tekken fans, but we're genuinely not happy with the current state of the game. And now we have to decide what we're going to do as individuals to try and rectify the situation, right? Now you can probably hear I'm a little sick. I sound a little bit like FDX after he commentates tournaments. But again, in the interest of the community on this one, I've kind of got out of bed, much to the chagrin of my wise advisors, and I'm making this video. Okay, so we're gonna press forward ahead because we're gonna press ahead because this video is really all about moving forward and moving on. So the first thing I really want to emphasize in this is the thing that I think no one should do. No matter how you choose personally to move on with your life, there's one thing I think you should definitely not do, and that is do not attack the development team, and especially do not attack any individual within the development team, okay? So this is a thing that I'm seeing a lot. I don't go on Twitter myself because I find it to be an intolerable shitstorm. However, I'm hearing it through the grapevine from various content creators I watch on YouTube that we've got a lot of people throwing stones on Twitter. And this kind of plugs into a theory that I have of the way that people seem to perceive the development team at the moment. And I call that the unholy trinity. Okay, so I'll see if I can put a little image for you up here. Don't use this out of context on Twitter, please. If you're gonna use it satirically, because it's not a real thing, and we're gonna go into that, okay? So you've got Harada, you've got Murray, and then you've got the kind of new wildcard character, Nakatsu, who I believe his name's Kohei Ikeda or something. Butchering that for sure. I'll learn Japanese another time, okay? I don't have time to do it just for the video. But these three characters, in a lot of people's minds, just are the development team, okay? So you've got Harada, who is this kind of Titan character, like a sort of ancient do-nothing king who has obviously created the game that you know and love, but it's now unclear the degree to which he exerts any influence over it, right? And he kind of plays it cool, and he wears his sunglasses, and he seems to do something. It's not that he has no say, but it's pretty clear he also doesn't have all the say, especially in the way that he subtly sort of shifts blame away from himself. When people talk about specific problems with the game's newer editions, right? Then you have Murray, who is kind of the shit talker guy in a way. That seems to be the way it's panned out for him. I don't know if he's chosen that or if it was kind of thrust upon him, but especially because of the state of the Tekken talks, where they unwisely, in my opinion, have wasted the viewer's time by basically making Murray translate everything instead of just having an active translator like the UN have had for decades. So Murray sort of becomes the de facto spokesperson for the franchise, which makes it seem like he has more say than he maybe does, because he is literally basically saying everything to the English-speaking audience in most cases. But of course, this is counterbalanced, like in their interview with, I think it was some game review company like IGN or something, just before the release of Season 2. Murray was saying, yeah, I've finished the battle passes on PC and PS5. I play through them, and then I let the big boys basically know like what I think they should change. And then he said like, yeah, I think that Dragunov has this one low that's like really annoying. And Harada goes, yeah, that's weirdly specific. That obviously really annoyed you. I don't know what Harada's point was he was trying to make there, but like, and again, I don't know why Murray didn't finish the damn Xbox Battle Pass. All right, I play Xbox. I'm like, but what about the freaking Xbox Battle Pass, dude? I see how it is. But anyway, so he does. So even though Murray like talks a lot of shit, kind of seems like he's not really having the final say in a lot. He's just kind of a dude who likes to run his mouth and is sort of a charismatic, cool, chill guy who can be the face of certain events, but he's not really like making the big calls. Then you have this Nakatsu guy who seems to be also the one who's appearing in all of the like press releases and PR stuff that the Tekken team is doing, and he is kind of the new blood in a way, and people are like, well, who's this guy? But I think he's technically, his position is the game director of Tekken 8, but he's also been the game director of Tekken 7, I believe. And so it's kind of like, well, if Murray isn't doing it and if Harada isn't doing it, then it must be this other guy, right? And that's just such foolish logic in my opinion, because the reality is we don't know what the fuck any of these guys exactly are doing. Like, and that's on purpose. You can see that was a wise decision for them to have made because of how much attack they've come under in this new season. Like, it's just as well that no one exactly knows who's doing what. And I just think it's so, when people attack them personally or call for them to be fired or something like that, that's just like a very ignoble and ignorant approach to trying to solve the problem, okay? I think it's just a no-go. The reality is, like, they're in a like crazy pimp logic type of situation, right? I mentioned this in the last video, and I think it's no secret at this point. It cost, the development team had to broker a considerable deal with Bandai Namco and by extension its shareholders in order to actually make this game happen, okay? It was a very expensive game, and Bandai Namco, the money men are ultimately the supreme puppet masters, if you like, and I can assure you that Harada, Murray, nor Nakatsu are said money men, right? So the reality is that, like, you can give them all the shit you want. All you're doing is hurting their feelings, and the reality, again, is that as long as you keep giving them the money, the crazy pimp doesn't care how much you hurt them, okay? But they care, and they should care, and these are the guys who are the custodians of your, of the franchise that you love. And again, it's a franchise, it's not a franchise. Okay, I'm gonna, that's cringe, but I'm gonna leave it in. I'll make sure, editing Quill, don't you dare take that line out, okay? But that's my point. Not only are they not the money men, they're not the Tekken team, okay? The Tekken team is a bunch of people, and they are, I'm sure, working around the clock to do something, okay? But the problem is that people have this sense that there's some bad actor in the mix, and they must be doing something. They're sabotaging the franchise, and they need to be, you know, cut out of the picture, right? They need to step down, they need to get fired. If such a person exists, and they do need to get fired, they will get fired behind closed doors, and it would be wrong of the company to fire someone because the public is calling for their head, because the public has no idea who's doing what, okay? I want to make that really clear. You and I, unless you have some very specific insider knowledge, don't know who is doing what, okay? But let's go to this idea now that somebody's doing something evil, okay? Now I'm gonna move on to a new concept. I call this person, this shadowy figure, the counterplay killer. Okay, now the main man, an icon in the Tekken content creator community, has used this term, has not used this term, but seems to have implied this concept in one of his recent YouTube videos where he called the patch bipolar. So even though he, in his stream, I believe specifically discourages and has a zero tolerance for people abusing specific developers or the developers, he nonetheless says this patch is bipolar. So there's something, it's almost like to him, there's some people who are making wise balancing decisions, and then there is this other person or people who are making these crazy, remove all the counterplay, like whatever decisions, right? And like with my main Fang, he's my main at the moment, the idea then I suppose is that, you know, there are some diligent, shrewd individuals who go, I think that Fang's back four is a little bit too strong. So let's make this little adjustment, and we're gonna say, instead of -9, let's make it -10 now, right? And they go, oh yes, that's a very sensible and balanced decision to have made. And then, you know, a fist slams down on the table of the boardroom, and this character goes, this counterplay killer goes, all right then, oh I see, yeah, oh you want to nerf a character, you want to nerf, all right, here's what we're gonna do, okay. It can be -10, but I want to add a string extension to it. And I want to make it so that string extension goes into stance. And also, if you're in hate, I want it so that the back four can go into 3+4, and you can do that dumb hate move that Fang has. How does that sound, guys? And then there's like an awkward silence, and then one guy, you know, in the corner goes, but I mean, what about like, what about counterplay? Where he's like, what did you, who said that? And it's like, oh, me. Did you just say counterplay? And everyone's just like this awkward silence, you know? It's like the coldness in the room. And he goes, you're fired. If anybody even thinks the word counterplay in my house, you're out, right? This is the counterplay killer character. It's like this person who just wants to turn Tekken into, that somehow has like, is just throwing their weight around in these development meetings or whatever, and just goes, nah, like, let's get this counterplay out of here. Now, maybe there's a grain of truth to that, But probably the idea that this is one person is a fiction. Like this doesn't really make sense. And the idea that you could figure out who that person is from the outside and then try and get them fired, it's understandable why you're kind of desperate to try and find a solution in that way, but that's just not how the whole thing works, right? And just to say, I just want to point out with the Feng thing, like back 4, yes, there's a string extension, but it's duckable, the string, and then it can't go into stance. So I don't think it's like there's one person making smart decisions and then another person making brain dead casino decisions. I think there is a team of people who are trying to push the game in a certain direction that the fans aren't happy with, okay? Now that's just speculation, of course, but I just wanted to bring up the counterplay killer because I just think it's like a funny image that it seems to be everywhere at the moment. But now this is the part of the video I really think that's the most important part. Just stop giving the developers shit when you don't even know what they're doing. You don't understand their situation, okay? Now let's go for the moving on part, all right? Okay, enough theory crafting on that end. Let's talk about what you can do as a person and what we can do, because I also have to make a decision here about what I'm gonna do. So I'm thinking about all this in the first place. Let's talk about how we can move forward. So the first thing you can do, I'm gonna list a few options and I'm gonna do them in order from wisest to least wise, in my opinion, okay? They're all a spectrum, and I'm not saying that doing any specific thing is actually really wise or unwise. It's just from my perspective. I want to try and lay out the options, okay, in order of what I think the smartest is, and then the least smart, if you like. So the first and best option in my book is to stop playing for a while and also stop complaining for a while. Okay, this is moving on in the truest sense. You are not attempting to fix the game anymore. You're not attempting to have your revenge on some mysterious counterplay killer. You're actually just moving on with your life, right? And even if you think that this game that you love has been turned into an objectively worse game, if it could be an objectively worse game in some platonic sense of things, like that idea, even if you accept it, it doesn't mean that your life has to be worse off as a consequence, okay? I'm a spiritual kind of guy. So in my book, there is at least a grain of truth to this idea that everything happens for a reason, right? So, for example, I've had to re-record this entire video. I didn't set the microphone up properly, but I'm confident that that happened for a reason. Even though I was annoyed, I go, okay, I have to do it twice. I'm gonna do it twice. And in some sense, the second version is gonna be the one that I had to make, right? Now, not everybody is airy-fairy, as they say like that. I understand, and I think the predominating modern view is an existentialist one, which is to say that the universe has no intrinsic meaning necessarily, but rather human beings make the meaning for themselves. But nevertheless, even if you make the meaning for yourself, you make the meaning for yourself, right? So if the game you love, you don't love no more, is that a bad thing? Well, it hurts. I understand that there's a sting to that. But what if that's an invitation for you to do something that you would not have done while you were still entranced by this game that we call Tekken, right? What if instead of spending 3 or 4 hours playing Tekken, you spend 3 or 4 hours playing an instrument that you haven't played in a while, that you've always wanted to learn to play, or learning a language, Or if you're lonely, maybe you go out into the world and try and find friends or even like the love of your life, right? Like a partnership. I want you to imagine that there's out there in the world, you know, at some bookshop that you want to go to because you're learning Japanese or something, there's someone there who's just been waiting for you to stop playing Tekken for a while, right? And as for your relationship with Tekken, you know, it's that old expression, I'll have to paraphrase it, but it goes something like, if you love something, then you have to let it go. And if it was meant to be, then it'll come back to you, right? And maybe it'll only come back to you in fond memories. Maybe it'll come back to you in the form of a new and improved game. Maybe they actually figure out how to make it a good game again, and then you can come back to it. Or maybe it doesn't come back. Maybe Tekken really is done for. But if that's the case, then it was never meant to be, right? It was your destiny to move on from Tekken in that case, okay? So it's not about an ultimatum. It's not about saying, you know, Tekken, you better like fix your shit or I'm out of here. That's later down the list, okay? This is about really moving on. And I think that's the wisest decision that you can actually make. So that's kind of option 1A, because it's about stop complaining and stop playing. Now we're gonna go option 1B. Similar but different. I'm calling this one replace like with like. Okay, this is the second wisest option. This is for the people out there who are saying to themselves, okay, Tekken's bad, but I love 3D fighting games, or I love fighting games, or I love video games. So I'm just gonna do something, I'm gonna play some adjacent game, right? In this case, namely, it's Virtual Fighter mostly, right? Like Virtual Fighter Revo, and then I'm gonna get on the hype train for like Virtual Fighter 6. And that's all well and good, right? I understand that, that angle, but I wanna give you an analogy here, okay? So this is purely hypothetical, definitely not just a personal experience of mine. But let's say you go to a bar every now and again, you know, with your friend, you go to some concerts or something. Let's say it's like a heavy metal, punk, grunge kind of feel bar, right? Vibe, if you will. And you go there one day to see a concert, and you look over to the bar and there's this beautiful girl there, okay? So this is a heteronormative analogy, but I hope you get the gist of it. And you go over and you're nervous, you're like, oh man, she's like, I feel like I'm meant to be with this girl, but I don't know like what to do. And then maybe you bump into her, right? And she's like, oh, and you look at her and you go, oh, sorry. And then you're both looking at each other and you realize you're like really drawn to each other. You're like really compatible. And you just instantly hit it off and you're like, oh, wow, you know, and you start noticing things about her. You're like, oh, she's like this really pretty blonde. Oh, and she's got Disney tattoos. And she's got daddy issues, right? Oh, she likes metal. She likes like the hardcore metal, right? And as you keep going, you keep like spending time with her, you get in a relationship with her, you start to see these traits kind of emerge. And eventually though, you realize that there's like a dark side to this girl. Let's call her Jessica, right? Let's say sometimes she says terrible things, right? Sometimes she does terrible things, like maybe she has a drinking problem or something, like, and eventually she does something that's unforgivable to you, and you have to break it off with her, right? You were attracted to her, but now once you understood the demons that she has, that's it. Like you can't unsee that. You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. So you break up with her, right? All right, cool. You move on. quote unquote. You move on. Then you go back to the same bar, let's say, like a couple of months later. Same friends, same concert, similar concert anyway. And you look over at the bar and there's another beautiful girl. And there's a part of you that's like, it's a new beautiful girl. And there's a part of you that's like, shit, is this the same? Am I getting myself into the same fucking situation, right? If that latter voice is not there at all, okay, you're naive, you've never been hurt. You know, there's something cute about that. But like, what happens when you go there, you talk to her, and you're like, oh, she's a pretty blonde, and she's got Disney tattoos, and she's got daddy issues, right? Let's say her name's Charlotte. It's just another cliche hot girl name. Well, okay, it's not fair to judge Charlotte based on Jessica, right? You can't be like, oh, she's the same. Like, that would be unfair. That would be prejudice, right? But what you have to acknowledge is that it's pretty obvious you have a type, right? And that type that you have has certain characteristics, and it behooves you to start really trying to see the pattern here, because otherwise you're going to keep putting yourself in the same shitty situation over and over again, right? And so I've seen this with, like, I used to play World of Warcraft, I used to play Yu-Gi-Oh! And World of Warcraft had its shitty patch called Cataclysm. Cataclysm was an appropriate name. And Yu-Gi-Oh! Had its pendulum thing, you know, and all of this kind of like, they just kept iterating. They were once a great game, and then they sort of felt like they had to move forward to keep capitalizing, to keep iterating, and eventually it just wasn't what it used to be, and it was no good. And you know, Tekken seems to have gone down that road. Will Virtua Fighter go down that road? Well, I don't know. I'd like to think they've learned their lesson, right? And in a sense, I'd be shocked if they hadn't. They would have to learn a lot of lessons from what a catastrophe Tekken 8 has been in a lot of ways, in terms of the way they've managed it, the way they've managed to just like 180 the goodwill of the community. But by the same token, it has a lot of things in common, right? It's this shiny new 3D fighter game, and they're obviously trying to do something new with the franchise. They've obviously spent a shitload of money, which they've gotten from someone, somewhere, and that someone wants to get that money back, right? So they have to play the market game. They are making a very similar kind of game. So how different can it really be? I don't know. That's not for me to say, obviously. But I just want you to bear that in mind, that, you know, it's not clear cut. When you replace like with like, it's not clear cut what the actual differences are, and you have to pay very careful attention, all right? Because otherwise you'll get burned again, all right? Now, if you do choose to play Virtua Fighter or Street Fighter or even just another video game, instead of just like, you know, going outside or whatever, then what I want to emphasize now is that you play Virtua Fighter out of a love of Virtua Fighter and not out of a hatred for Tekken or a desire to have Tekken change. Right? Because again, that in this analogy of like the relationship analogy, that's like if you that's like if you sleep around with someone similar to your ex-boyfriend or girlfriend to try and make the ex-boyfriend or girlfriend change, right? That's messed up, okay? That's not a healthy thing to do. You have to move on, okay? You can't treat Virtua Fighter like some kind of rebound or something. That's messed up, okay? So, all right, okay? So we're going to now move on to the next option, okay? So we've got stop playing and stop complaining as the overarching best recourse, in my opinion. Again, not again, but just to say, if you want to get on your, if you want to do the boycott thing, okay, that's fair enough. You know, put your name down, let them know that you've stopped playing the game because you object to it. But don't keep checking back on it and all that. Just sign your name on the dotted line and then walk away. Okay, here is the next option, is that you keep playing, you continue to play Tekken 8, but you stop complaining, okay? This is kind of a goated one. I got to admit, the people who really like commit to this option, I have quite a lot of respect for. What you do is you understand that Legacy Tekken is gone. You're no longer playing Legacy Tekken. What you are now playing, and I think I've got the meta down here, is a 3-strike game, okay? It's like baseball. So 3 strikes and you're out. And this is per round, guys, okay? So, round start, okay? Fight. What you have to do right off the bat is open up your opponent with offense, and open up is using it very loosely. Basically, you have to attack first, okay? If you fail to attack first, that's strike 1. You let your opponent attack you first, that's a failure, okay? You have done the wrong thing and it's now strike 1. Now that you've let them hit you, even on block, you now have to guess, okay? They're gonna hit you with a mix-up. If they're using the right moves, they're gonna hit you with a mix-up now. You have to guess mid or low, okay? You can't step, it's a true 50-50. If you guess wrong between mid and low, that's strike 2, okay? You lose half your health. Strike 3, you can probably guess. They get another mix-up now, okay? If they're sort of playing their Oki right, they basically just get to force you into another hard guess now. So now you get to guess between mid and low again, and if you guess wrong, that's strike 3. You lose the other half of your health, you lose, okay? Every round is just that. That's the meta. So probably doesn't matter too much who you main at that point, like unless they're like a genuinely shitty character now, like arguably Lee is. But probably all characters basically have this like 3-strike thing now. I think combo damage and all that shit, it doesn't even really matter that much. I could be wrong. But maybe you play maybe there's a top tier who turns it into like a 2-strike game, right, somehow. Or it lets you kind of wiggle out of the guess, like Yoshimitsu with his flash, or you know, Feng or Jin with their like sidestep attack thing. Maybe a few characters who can kind of get out of it, and then you probably want to main them. But basically it's a 3-strike game and that's it. And so you just go, that's what I'm playing, that's the game, let's play that. And if you do that, because a lot of people are just quitting left, right, and center, and a lot of veteran players are stuck in their ways. So even though they're really good at the game, they're really good at a game from the past. So like, I think Nee was in that position for a long time where he was like playing Tekken 8 like it was Tekken 7, and it wasn't working. It was only when he could really update that he actually became like a top player again, really. But if you're like a newer player, you can probably get really fucking good really quickly just using very 3-strike, like rudimentary flowcharts, honestly. You don't learn any defense. You just learn how to, like when you need to guess, and you just learn how do I attack first. You just focus on those 2 things, and the rest of the game just kind of doesn't matter anymore. The drawback with this though, the reason that I think this is not particularly wise, is because people hate the game now, and so they're gonna have to really try and change it. And I think they will. And so you'll actually get worse at classical Tekken by playing this way, right? Because once you start playing this 3-strike casino game, if they ever do revert it back to classical Tekken, then you will be worse off. It'll be like negative practice, right? It'll be like you were practicing the wrong thing for months. So you'll genuinely get worse at the game. when it gets like reverted or quote unquote corrected. So that's why I don't think this is actually a good option in terms of like sustainable gameplay. However, in the short term, kind of badass, right? I kind of respect people who just like, yeah, this is Coin Flip Simulator, the game, and they just get really good at that because there is a legitimate skill curve to that. Just like RPS, like there are like world champion rock, paper, scissors players for a reason, right? Okay, now we're gonna move on to the final option, which I think is the least wise. Okay, there might be other options I just haven't thought of. The least wise one, in my opinion, is to keep playing and keep complaining. So you just keep on being stuck in this toxic relationship that is called Tekken. And again, this is not going to bode well in your life, guys. Yes, you can keep the game on life support this way, but there are almost, for the majority of players, this is like the worst case scenario. This is the worst choice you can make because it's the antithesis of moving on, right? However, there's one caveat to that I want to make, and that is for content creators and professional players. I think it's completely fair enough if a content creator or a top player chooses to continue playing the game given the financial incentive that they have to do so, right? Like characters like Main Man, FDX, Spag, and like all the tournaments that they've put together, or the streaming culture that they've put together, or, you know, players like Arsenal and Nee who have just dedicated their whole life to this game and they just really want to play Tekken all the time. Even if they don't like the current state of the franchise, you know, they are probably wiser to brave the storm, to weather the storm, than they are to just jump ship, right? Because this is their livelihood, guys. This is their career. So again, don't attack people for doing this. It's perfectly understandable, and it's probably a good bet because I think overall, while the game may be in a bad state currently, it's probably not going to be that way forever. I think it's taken a big hit. Like, I think it's taken a big wound from this, but I don't think it's actually a mortal wound. A lot of people want it to be. Like, a lot of the people who are really negative about the state of it are saying Tekken 8 is dead, but it's not. It's just in a bad place, guys. Like, and that is, I just want to really reiterate that again. It's in a bad place. And so that means that the Tekken developers are in a bad place. That means the content creators are in a bad place. And you have to have compassion for that. Like, you must have compassion for that, because you can't, if you give them shit, if you call them names and like call for their head and all that, you can't unsay that shit. You can't undo it. And like, even though, you know, you probably won't be personally held responsible if you talk a bunch of shit on Twitter, like the net, it's still going to have a net negative on their emotional states, right? And so as artists, like the content creators, the competitors, the developers, as artists, it's time to give them a break, because they're not evil. They're in an awkward position, and a lot of people think that they deserve criticism, but really the thing that most people are actually criticizing at the end of the day is capitalism. And they're scapegoating in their mind these people who are actually the victims of capitalism, right? They're being forced to do some terrible stuff, okay? And they've been forced into a position where they're being character assassinated. And I just don't think that's justified in any way, shape, or form. So I want to wrap the video up there. I'm sure it's gone on for a while, but I think I was as poignant as I can possibly really be. But if I carry on too much longer, it won't be. Like and subscribe if you like it, even though I'm not going to make more Tekken videos, simply because Google ain't paying me for this shit. At this point, I'm effectively doing this out of the kindness of my heart, but I want to eventually have a platform where I can actually speak my mind in a way that it can get out to people, even if it's not like some trendy thing like this, right? So if you want to do that for me, do that, and I'll appreciate it. And even if not, I really do send you my love. I know it's a tough time, actually. Like, I've been through my fair share of loss in my life, and it's easy to trivialize it and just be like, oh, it's just a video game or whatever. But I know a lot of people really have taken it pretty hard. So I wish you the best in moving on, and I send you my love until next time.